Who pulled 5.4?
I did.
Okay. I'll read it. 5.4, motion to approve early activation of email for District 1 Supervisor-elect Helen Owen, entitled the email address of Supervisor-elect, pulled by Supervisor Pyska.
Yeah, I'm pulling this to have another conversation. We didn't have a conversation about this last time. I think for Supervisor-elect Rasmussen, this was also on consent. But to be honest, I wasn't super comfortable then, and now that I've thought more about it, I'm a lot more uncomfortable with this, but we've already done it. I did not have an early access email address. But what I'm really concerned about is they are not employees. They have not taken an oath. I believe that we've got some liability exposure by letting people have these addresses. They should not be doing work of the county. They should not be, there should not be a perception that they can be communicating with constituents through these email addresses or, any work of the county that's contacting agencies, doing anything. And we have no control over that. We have no assurances that that's not happening. I'm not making any assumptions that that's happening. But I do have an issue with this. We gave this one email address with the intent to network at an event. And we're going to do it again, and I'm not going to vote inconsistently with what I voted last time. But every supervisor-elect that I've been working with over the last year had their own email addresses and their own cards. None of them have this. So I just want to hear from you, County Council, what our liability and our exposure is to have people out there with these addresses that are very powerful. I think we all recognize how powerful our email addresses are, without any assurances that they're not doing work on the county's behalf.
That in large part would hinge on or depend on, what those email addresses would be used for. In the staff memo, it did indicate that it appears that the email addresses, at least for that period of time, would be used primarily for networking, and the email itself or email account itself will have no other connections to Lake County servers or networks. There is that consideration or factor of the appearance of, by virtue of the email addresses itself, being perceived in a certain way, despite the what was stated in the staff memo for your board's consideration. One possible option for your board is to provide, after discussions with my office and administration staff, is to look into ways to possibly improve on that process or implement certain protocols or procedures when it comes to setting up these types of email accounts for these narrow set of circumstances, so that the person who would utilize such an email for these narrow purposes would sign off or attest to certain obligations that he or she would then he or she would comply with, and direction. Certainly, your board can provide direction to staff to look into that issue further, so that perhaps staff can bring it back to the board at a later point in time. It could come in the form of just an attestation clause or some type of acknowledgement or consent that the official or official elect, supervisor elect, or some other employee to be a future employee would sign off on.
Well, I think that this is just a practice that we shouldn't continue. It's happening right now. Like I said, I'm not going to vote one way. I'm not going to vote another way than I've already previously voted in approving Supervisor-elect Rasmussen, and there isn't anything that we can do to solve this immediate problem other than ask for them to voluntarily sign something like this, which we can't make them do. But I just want to be very clear that both of them are on notice, that the intent is only for networking, and that they're, like I said before, they're not employees, they have not taken the oath, and this does put us in a situation where we could be liable for things that are not covered by our insurance. Okay. So, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and vote yes on this. I would hope that both of them could come in and just attest to how they're using it. And if anything's happened in the past, just let us know. Just be very transparent about how it's been used so that we feel better about it, or at least I feel better about it. But I really had to bring this forward.
I don't remember having one that early. I was on the planning commission though, so I know it says my name here that I had one, but I know I was on the planning commission. So yeah, I don't know. You said you didn't get one?
Nope.
Do you remember?
I didn't get one. No. Not until I was sworn.
You remember?
They brought in my iPad, and that's when they did it.
Supervisor Sabatier.
So I checked in with Shane French, and I apologize. I completely forgot about the Planning Commission. So you already had yours, but I checked in with our IT director, Shane French. Mine was activated November 4th of 2018. I know Carol Hutchinson at the time had spoken to me to set that up in order for me to go to CSAC. And I don't disagree with the potential liability, but we're not even thinking about the other things we're doing. We just bought a plane ticket, a hotel room, and a conference to go to for somebody who's not an employee at the same time. But as a supervisor-elect, you're already part of the Brown Act. You're already elected. You're just not sitting in the decision-making body. So I think that I would like for us to discuss how to best prepare somebody to come into office, because the last thing I also want to do is them using an email that puts them in jeopardy, where now their email is accessible to the public because of the fact that they are a supervisor-elect. So I like to look at better options, but I also don't want to stop sending people to training before they start. But is that a gift of public funds? I don't think so, but that is a liability as well. So I think it can create a bigger conversation of how to make sure that we protect ourselves to the most possible for the future. But I just know that that's the treatment that I received, and I thought it was very useful to not have to switch my emails and to switch my connections with the people that I made during those conferences, and that's what we're attempting to do as well. Both are involved in training at this very moment in time. Both have been paid for by the county to do this training, and so I do hope that we can review the process to make sure that we mitigate as much of our liability as possible.
And there are a lot, it's this new Supervisor Institute. All the counties send them. None of them have the email addresses that I spoke to. I have contacts with all of them. They all gave me their temporary, you can set up a temporary Gmail account. There's lots of ways to handle this, and everyone's been handling it. I've been working with Rebecca, the new supervisor-elect in Sonoma County, all year. She gave me her temporary business card last year. So there's a lot of ways to do this, but I just want to be very clear where I stand on this. I do not think it's appropriate.
Thank you for pulling this item, Supervisor Pyska. Definitely food for thought. I do want to distinguish the new Soups Institute because there's a specific statute in the government code that allows for training using those public funds for a supervisor-elect. So I'm very comfortable with that. You raised some very interesting questions on the use of the email. And in particular, once that email goes live, even if the intent of the email owner is to only do networking, it's open for business. And I can think of at least one issue where the use of the email prematurely would be conducting county business. So both from a Brown Act perspective and a liability perspective, I think there's something to look at here. CAO Parker, I assume our current policies and procedures are silent on this? Silent? Zippity zip?
Yes, sir.
And I don't want to put any new supervisors on the spot, though we have at least one supervisor-elect who can speak to how it has been used or not at his discretion. I do think the policy needs to be reviewed. I didn't think it through. And even if Mr. Rasmussen expresses no business has been conducted, I think it has, if only because I've taken advantage of that email address very liberally in making introductions, in highlighting issues of interest, and just didn't even think of anything of it. Oh, we're in a transition team. That's what transition teams do. But a transition involving staff is one thing. A transition between a sitting supervisor and the next supervisor to sit in the seat is different. To your point, yeah, I don't want to go apples and oranges and not approve this today, but I probably share not just the discomfort you raised in the abstract, but now suddenly some real discomfort just because of some of the stuff I've been shotgunning out there. And again, there's members of the public that are probably taking advantage of that and shotgunning some input on other things. But I can't speak directly to that because I don't have access. So that said, any other supervisor comments right now? Let's open this up for public comment. This is item 5.4, the proposed approval of early activation of email for District 1 Supervisor-elect Helen Owen, and to title the email address as Supervisor-elect. Supervisor-elect Rasmussen, I see you approaching the podium. Would you like to speak on this?
Sure, Brad Rasmussen, Supervisor-elect. First of all, I wouldn't have a problem signing a policy. I wasn't given a policy. The way this came about was, I believe, Chair Sabatier contacted me and said he was going to make that request, that I'd have it when I went to the New Supervisors Institute. And as I recall, I had it maybe around that time I left. I don't recall exactly. But I have given it to folks that I am trying to meet with prior to taking the seat, because I'm trying to connect with people in the community that I need to be connected with when I'm a board member, so that people do have it. I was contacted by a county department on it today that requested I come to a meeting over at the Circle of Native Minds later in January. So I was communicated with the CAO's office about setting up my training, and also for arrangements for the next set of training that's coming up, and certainly with Supervisor Green, because I believe he provided it to the Scotts Valley Advisory Council, which I would be taking over from him as the supervisor that attends those meetings. So those are some examples of how I've currently used it. I don't know if you have any other specific questions, I'll answer them, but I don't have a problem signing a policy. I do agree that a policy is a good idea to be given out with that email. This is what you can do or can't do with it. I don't know that that's something that, whether that has to be approved by the board or the CA's office has that authority, or if it could even be done before we're sworn in. So, but again, I'm happy to follow whatever request at this point, but I wasn't given any specific guidelines on don't do this, don't do that. I've used it. Well, one example was tours that I did at the Geysers and over at Reynolds Systems. So those are other examples. So people have it. Anybody in the county, I'm assuming, can find it because it's in the system. But I can only access the email, no other county systems at this point. So
Well,
unless there's any
just
other
one
questions.
follow-up question would be, not just interactions with staff and all that, have you received, and you don't have to say what or how much, but have you received constituent communications on any issues that were pending before this board?
Not that I recall specifically. I don't have a problem looking through it to see, but I'm trying to open it up right now.
Well,
I can't say that I recall anything specific from a constituent about a concern that they had on something that's been pending on the agenda since November, or since when I got it in November.
Cool.
I don't believe there's anything in there on that. There's been some other stuff now I'm recalling with the COC, which is another reason, because Supervisor Chair reached out to me to see if I would be willing to serve as the coordinator for one of the sites in Lakeport. So that was another reason so those folks, the COC has my county email to communicate with me about the training and what's going on with the point in time count. Because after I'm sworn in, I'm going to be I don't know what the right word is.
Site leader.
A site leader for the point in time count.
Yeah, and so this is just where I'm getting uncomfortable, and I really appreciate you coming up and having this conversation, because you didn't, you were just given this email address, like you said, without any information or restrictions or guidelines. So I appreciate you coming up. But I think we're crossing over into county business here. I really do, especially working with the COC and saying, like, point in time counts. This was specifically for networking. Is there any other county business that you did with the email that we know about?
Today, actually, I sent a couple emails. I checked in with the county office this morning to ask a question about how a board member goes about requesting a proclamation for somebody in the community that deserves it. I have a situation that just came up that I thought was more than deserving of that. And so I requested how would I go about that, and was advised kind of how that would work. So I did use it to request some information that I could gather about that proclamation that I want to submit to be able to have done in January. So that's something that happened this morning.
if I can ask one more follow-up question, because the email is one thing, but it's really the conduct of county business and the Brown Act concerns it raises at issue. So a follow-up question would be, using either a personal email or your campaign email previously, have any constituents or future constituents reached out through those site channels on matters that were pending before this board?
At any point since I've campaigned?
I think that's a separate.
Campaigning,
Yeah, we're just talking about his county email
Okay.
being used for business.
Well, we're talking about the conduct of county business using email.
Well, yeah, but if he's using a personal email, that's not what I'm concerned about. I'm only concerned about the county email and the weight that that carries, and doing business,
So,
because, if you're using a county email to do county business, and you're not an employee, and we have to be very, very careful there. And I think that there's a perception that if you have a county email, that you can do that work. And so, I can't stop you we can't stop you from doing anything. I would just really request that be very careful and keep it within the scope of what we approved it for. And I would hope that we could pass that along also to Supervisor-elect Owen. Be very cognizant. We're approving this over the very limited scope, and it's not to be used for any work or contacting any agencies, or in any way giving the illusion that you're already seated. So, I really appreciate you coming up, and we can have this conversation. And I think that we need to put it in our board protocols that we just don't do this again, that we just wait until people are seated.
I mean, I don't know that it matters that much. It does say on the signature, the supervisor-elect. But then I would just request, if the county's going to give me direction about how to use it, I would appreciate knowing that sooner than later.
Well, and we can give that direction, but absent a formal policy that has been formally adopted by this board, all we can do is ask pretty please, don't do county work with your brand new county email. That's, so I don't even know. I would love to give that direction. I don't think we can give the instruction now. I think we can potentially approve the email and just hopefully share this video and some of the concerns stated here, and then make a referral, since we're pulling the board policies anyway, to address that. And I think it needs to be addressed sooner than later, but I don't know that we can attach it to this recommended action. Any more? Thank you, Supervisor-elect. Anything you'd like to add?
I think we've covered it all.
I think we've covered it. All right, so I'm going to, any other public comment on this? You're the only one left in the chambers, last man standing. Anybody in the Zoom? No, they're dropping like flies. I'll bring it back to the board for possible action.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve early activation of email for District 1 Supervisor-elect Helen Owen and title the email address as Supervisor-elect.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.